This is part 2. We were looking at Gestalt psychology and talking about the impact that Gestalt psychology had in the field. So I was explaining in part 1 that this is looking at whole, putting the world together as a whole. So as it has here, the whole is different from the sum of its parts. And really what these Gestalts did was open up the field of sensation and perception. So if you looked at your psychology syllabus, you will know that we cover a unit on sensation and perception. It was the Gestalt psychologist that really introduced this as an area of psychology. The next man we're going to mention is a man by the name of William James. Now, he was the first American psychologist and also the author of the first psychology textbook. He also taught a course at Harvard in the field of psychology as well. So by writing a textbook and by teaching courses, he's really going to begin to spark interest in the field of psychology. He is also founder of functionalism, and so make sure you associate William James with functionalism. When we talk about functionalism, this is the theory that emphasizes that all behavior serves a function, and that function is survival. So if you think back to your science classes, how do humans or animals survive? They survive by this word here, adaptation. Okay, so this would be key element to functionalism, is that it helps people adapt, people and animals adapt to their environment. Now, although this is an outdated and early approach to psychology, it has opened the door to a new field of psychology out there today known as evolutionary psychology. So basically, evolutionary psychology has its basis in the field of functionalism. Moving forward into the modern 20th century, my favorite here, and those of you who had me in psychology before, remember this man, Sigmund Freud, one of my favorites. Sigmund Freud is one of those influential people that people either love him or they hate him. And you may find some college professors that won't even mention Freud. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that you cannot scientifically prove many of his theories. But however controversial he was, he still made great strides in so many different areas in the field of psychology. He is the founder of psychoanalysis, and psychoanalysis focuses on this word here. This is a key word to remember, the unconscious mind. And by the unconscious mind, we mean those things that we are not aware of. And so according to Freud, abnormal behaviors that people had were a result of unconscious drives and conflicts in people's mind. Also, many of those were attributed to unresolved sexual conflicts as well. Psychoanalysis, Freud had theories of personality. So when we get to our personality unit, you will see this as well. And he introduced a technique that attempted to provide insight into thoughts and actions by trying to interpret those underlying unconscious motives and conflicts. And we will look at different ways that he tried to do that in class with some activities such as free associations. But he believed basically that your dreams and were a link to your unconscious mind, and also that by using various techniques, we can get into that unconscious mind and figure out how those are impacting behaviors. And a lot of those unconscious motives are a result of unresolved issues from your past. And we'll talk about examples of those in class. We see many of Freud's influences in psychology. You may have heard of Freudian slips or the term anal retentive. Those all come from Freudian theories. So Freudian slips, sometimes you may make a comment that has a sexual underlining tone, and they may call that a Freudian slip. Again, that's because of his relationship and the emphasis he placed on that. And then also you may have heard that somebody's anal retentive, which looks at one of his developmental stages in psychology. And typically if somebody's anal retentive, they say that they are very, very organized and want things a certain way. And again, that's in relation to his developmental stages. So he had influences on psychology and the psychodynamic theory, on unconscious thoughts, and also, as I mentioned, on putting a very strong emphasis on the childhood experiences that we have. Next person you might remember if you took Psych Foundations is Ivan Pavlov. And Pavlov was a behaviorist that was concerned and focused on the area of learning. So he was a learning theorist. And he is known for this term right here, classical conditioning, in which you are going to learn certain behaviors through associations. We will talk a lot more about that in future chapters, but we're looking at those associations that we have. And he studied learning in animals, so you might have heard of Pavlov's dog. And again, he was a behaviorist, so he was concerned here with this idea of observable behaviors, and that really is key to studying Ivan Pavlov, or remembering Ivan Pavlov. Watson was another behaviorist, and again, concerned with observable behaviors. He was not concerned with mental processes, and he emphasized objective and scientific methodology. And Watson actually conducted an experiment where he used Pavlov's ideas of classical conditioning to condition a rabbit, to condition a small boy to develop a fear of rabbits, which in turn ended up being into white fuzzy animals. And we'll talk more about his experiment and the impact it had in future chapters. So behaviorism, we're only studying observable behaviors. We are not concerned with mental processes. So today, the focus of learning is on rewards and also on observations or social learning. Skinner is also a famous behaviorist who looked at operant conditioning and the way rewards and punishments influence behavior. And he devised ways to help use operant conditioning to achieve desired behaviors from animals and humans. Humanistic psychology is going to look at the conscious experiment and the freedom to choose and personal growth. Keywords here: freedom to choose, personal growth, self-actualization, this idea of be all you can be. Instead of saying that your past influences your behavior or rewards and punishment influences all your behavior, humanists say you have free will and you have the free will to choose. And it also focuses on this point here, reaching full potential. And basically what that means is that all of us have a potential and that we should strive to work to reach that full potential. Carl Rogers is going to be our next person of importance, and he is going to be a humanist. He stresses the importance of acceptance, geniusness, and empathy in fostering that human growth. He's really known for this idea of empathy. And as I said, we'll talk more about him when we get into our unit on psych therapies. Abraham Maslow, another famous humanist. If you have taken maybe sociology, you've heard of this idea of the hierarchy of needs. This looks at the fact that we all have needs that need to be met, starting at the base which is basic food, water, shelter, and then moving up to being accepted, self-esteem, and then finally to that final